do a bit of a preamble just because we've got 3 viewers,
Oh, wow.
4, so I think we've peaked.
We've reached a heavy height along.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling dizzy. Yes, thank you for joining us. This is the 3rd Giallo Neon Eye Curation podcast, kind of the same own company. Yeah, so today we've literally just finished watching Deep Red, which was quite a ride, especially the ending, which we'll come to. You've seen it a few times, is that right?
I think, well, I don't know if I'd count that as another viewing, as I came in towards the end, but about 4 or so times, I think. Yeah.
So this is part of the I feel I should explain this a little bit. Part of our curation series. So we're doing Giallo just now. We've watched Blood and Black Lace. We've watched Your Vice is a Lot, Dream and Only I Have the Key.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm still hung up on that title. And we've just watched Deep Red. So the idea is that you guys at home can watch these and then join with this discussion, because we are going to talk spoilers. I thought just to try and just what we haven't done so far, but I thought would be good for this one, is just to sort of allow people who haven't seen the film to engage with this. Is just to maybe for us as a collective to offer a synopsis of what the fuck happened in Deep Red. So where to begin?
Yeah, well, I suppose you would begin with the film. I'm pretty sure it's the opening with the psychic who calls out a member of the audience for being a murderer. Then
before they even do that, they have the title sequence,
which someone gets murdered in.
Yeah. Straight away.
Yeah. Okay. So it opens with a murder, then someone the psychic calling out the murderer before she gets murdered, and this must be 15-20 minutes in. Then you meet the protagonist, jazz pianist called Marco, played by David Hemmings, who is held as a witness to the crime. Meets investigative journalist Jana, played by Daria Nicoli, and the two of them kind of go on this, I don't want to say it, it's a buddy horror sort of thing, I think, where they try and uncover who the killer is and what Marco thinks he saw that night. And it goes some pretty wild places.
And the killer always played, which I thought was very cool, the way there's always that very creepy music, and they're trying to find, he's sort of using that as a clue to unravel the rest of it.
Yeah, so it's a children's lullaby which is used as a motif to sort of signal the killer's near in the film.
So one thing I was gonna ask just about like a sort of general point on the sort of way it's made is once again the languages are quite weird, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, again, that's just the mixed nationalities. So sorry you guys are watching the English dub there, which is something I haven't actually done myself with this one.
So what does that mean? Like, because they look like, so the guy Marcus, right, is speaking in English though.
Yes, he's speaking English, so that's why his actual speech looked correct in there. But as you saw, Jana, for instance, towards the end, it doesn't match up at all. So they would just got some cheap actors in to go over it and just so they could just distribute it wherever. Although this film, interestingly, never got a UK release. It got a US one, but it was cut down to an hour 42. So that's why in the English dub there were certain scenes that were still in Italian, I believe.
Is that what that was?
Because there was no English recording of that ever done. So in the American cut of that, which they called it the Hatchet Murders, which is just an incredibly generic name, they removed the entirety of Jana and Marcus's friendship relationship, all of the weird comedy scenes, a couple of instances of what they thought was real animal cruelty, but was special effects.
Right. The lizard.
Yeah, the lizard. Yeah.
So all the bits that we saw in Italian actually had
No English recording of it. Yeah.
and it wasn't significant that they were in Italian. It was just
No,
that they
it
were
wasn't a
cut like
stylistic choice.
So they just
That's
didn't
a
have. They didn't have the recording.
Yeah, because I believe that they tested it with American audiences, and they just went, they're not going to like this. They're going to want something streamlined, like the older Giallo, or more like a murder mystery.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But the thing is, if you remove those scenes and their friendship, I think the film, well, it was called, it got Dario Argento referred to as incomparably incapable director by a New York Times critic. So perhaps it wasn't the best version of the film. But I think it loses a lot of its charm between sort of the brutality within it, if you would take out the central friendship.
Lei è quello che ha visto tutto, il super testimone oculare.
Ah, Febroni, chiamami un po' Mingozzi, vai, gli devo dire una cosa. Ah, ecco, poi telefono anche alla centrale. Sì, commissario. Mingozzi!
Argento supervised those cuts.
Really?
Yeah, because for ages it was believed that it was American distributors going, no, we're taking over, we're going to cut this. But it turns out Argento oversaw their proposed cuts and just went, yep, just get it to the American audience.
Interesting. I think that was just a desire to get it to a bigger audience.
Yes, yeah, I think that's exactly it. And it's also the fact that when it was re-released after Suspiria came out, the tagline was the new nightmare from, and I believe it called it a continuation to Suspiria, despite the fact the films have nothing in common.
Weird.
Apart from Goblin, but yeah.
Yeah. And it was all Goblin. The
Oh,
score.
Goblin. So there was originally Giorgio Gasolini who was to do the score for this, but Argento put it lightly as the music he handed me was awful. He gave it to me and I asked him, what is this? You don't understand the film. So then he tried to get Pink Floyd. Oh yeah, well, previously, and in the retrospective from next week, or the supplementary Four Flies and Grey Velvet, Argento had Ennio Morricone do the score for that before he left halfway through, because Argento told him his music was terrible.
Got a bit of a track record.
So Argento and musical directors don't seem to get on too well. But after Gasolini left, Argento decided that he wanted to get Pink Floyd to do the score. They saw the film, I believe, and went, we're not interested in this. So one of Argento's friends said, there's this band, Goblin, give them a look. And they started I believe he did 4 films where they did the score. There was this, Suspiria, Phenomena, and Dawn of the Dead, which Dario Argento produced.
Cool.
So, bit of a healthy working relationship.
An improvement.
Yeah.
Because it was interesting how the story was about like a jazz musician, and the music was kind of jazzy, but also...
Yeah, I think for me the most interesting thing with the whole jazz musician comes from the fact that so much of Giallo just hates everything about the counterculture. And, you know, saying last week your Vice, the hippies at the beginning who are shown to be morally corrupt and sort of detestable. And in this, I think you're sort of meant to sympathise with Marcus. He's still meant to be seen as a fairly abhorrent character, which seems to be one of Jean's main purposes in the film, to just call him out and go, what are you talking about? But yeah, the music in this, I think, is meant to have that free-form kind of experimentation that is so prevalent within the genre as well.
You talk about the counterculture. I wonder what is sort of captured in the counterculture. I don't know if you have any thoughts as well, but like, because obviously there was, I remember a few eye rolls from both of us during some of the interactions between Marcus and Gianna when he's talking about that scene with the arm wrestle where it's
Yes.
like, just stronger.
Women weak.
But I wondered whether the feminist sort of angle on it is kind of, is that like, not that it has to be this binary, but is that culture or counterculture? You know what I mean?
I would say that's something separate, and I think it's a separate point the film is trying to make, where it's trying to sort of, because by that point, Argento's films had kind of had this misogynist label sort of put against them, where it was, the guy detective goes out, solves a crime, the women are in peril, and I feel as if Deep Red was a slight response to that. It's slightly heavy-handed. I'm not sure if he has the best grip on it, but I think it was him trying to go, I can actually write a woman character, possibly. But within the counterculture, we said eye rolls. I thought it was going to be about Carlo, is it?
There's that other scene, I was going to mention that one, where he's got his male friend, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's the scene. I mean, if we're watching that and kind of going, this could go one of two ways, given shallow sort of track history of that topic. But again, I don't know what you guys thought about that. I think it came off better than I expected. It wasn't as blown out in eccentricity. It
didn't feel like there was a dislike for overtly anyway. It was a bit like, it was strange that it was a strange, maybe I don't know, just maybe why include it a little bit.
It does feel a bit superfluous.
Because it didn't really explore it on positively or negatively. I mean, I don't know, but then, it's weird. They're sort of exploring the attitude. They sort of do briefly touch on the attitudes towards it when he uses the F word towards it and that sort of thing. But I don't know.
It never comes back into the film at all, though. It was so brief, and then that's it. Over with. Sort of seems irrelevant.
It does.
You said, just brought it up.
I mean, I guess you could argue there could be some implied negativity towards that form of sexuality, because what that character ends up being within the terms of the plot. Maybe that's meant to be like the first seeding, which I hope not.
No, please, no, Dario.
But it's the film. I think interestingly, the film it's a long giallo. I mean, I think it's the longest one on this list, coming in over 2 hours, and so you could see the argument upon general release, especially internationally, why they may want to cut it down. But I think the film is a succession of little moments that you go, okay, by itself, what the hell is that? It just seems to mesh together quite nicely. There's a lot of, that scene, and even though the murders seem to have this prolonged sort of dragging out, or in the ending when they're going through the school, that could have been sort of half the length, but it just feels as if it works, and I find it quite puzzling, but I'm sort of fascinated by it.
I suppose, do you think that, from a female perspective, how do you think it represented women in that film? Do you think that it was, like, because obviously they explore, like, obviously Marco was like a misogynist, right? But do you think that the film came across as misogynistic, or do you think it did a reasonable job of presenting misogyny and exploring it rather than being misogynistic itself?
I mean, the fact that, what is it, Jana? Yeah, the fact that she is the one who gets stabbed at the end and dies, and Mark is the one who solves the mystery and sort of like wins the competition in the end. Just kind of.
She actually survives in that one. Yeah, the doctor has a throwaway line where it goes, "She's strong, she's a fighter."
I don't
remember that at all.
No, I think we were still reeling from the death before.
That's so
I suppose as well, it's done from a male perspective, isn't it? So I wouldn't say it does it well. I think it tries to it tries to explore female empowerment, but she's still, I suppose, like, you know, the little dance she does when...
Yeah, that was odd.
Yeah. I suppose you have to look at it in the context of the time it was made in. So I would say that it probably is important that it was explored to a certain extent, whatever the extent it was, rather than just making her like a submissive character. And
Yeah. For a while it wasn't clear whether she was just manipulating him to get evidence and that kind of thing, or whether it was like genuine affection. I think for a while I was kind of unsure, and then it seemed to reach the point where it's like, well, she's like, I love you, and is like sleeping with him. It's a bit like, it felt more, I don't know, what did you guys think?
Well, I think initially she sort of goes like, oh, you're shaking up, you're nervy and everything, I know, so that. It seems as if, it seems as if she's sort of playing him to get the story, so it seems in that way she's controlling the situation. Then there is that bizarre left turn where he says to her, let's run away together, let's go on holiday, and the dance and everything. But my main takeaway at first was I thought they were trying to frame it that she was the killer, because she was in none of the crime scenes, and it gets the phone call after the bath incident, and I thought that's what they were going for. So I think overall I was just relieved it didn't go down that sort of.
In is it Blood and Black Lace where it turns out that it's the female?
Yes, it's the wife or...
Yeah, so I suppose it's good that they didn't do that, because that was sort of a bit... I think with that film, Blood and Black Lace, I thought it was quite good, like the way that they explored the women in that film, but then that at the end I was like, oh. And I suppose in this one a little bit, like you said, is she trying to manipulate him to get information? It's sort of she's manipulative and then she's in love with him. There's no sort of like middle ground in terms of how she...
It comes very suddenly.
It does, It was jarring.
Because we were like, oh, what? I love you. Where's that coming from?
But a fun wee side note on that one is for Daria Nicoli, who played Jana, was actually married to Dario Argento. So they started a relationship during this film, which then led to the birth of Asia Argento, the actress director.
Really?
And so Daria went on to write Suspiria alongside him and star in Tenebrae, Phenomena, Opera, and is an extra in Suspiria as well, before she divorced him and started working with Mario Bava. So she's so influential to the whole Giallo scene.
Dimentica. È troppo tardi.
Ma che è successo?
Ho trovato il tuo appunto e sono corsa qui. Ho visto una luce rossastra in una delle finestre.
We haven't looked at Suspiria yet, but Suspiria is so supernatural. It's about like witches, you know, very literally about witches. I wonder if this is almost like a precursor in that sense to maybe like exploring more supernatural.
Yeah, it's definitely been regarded as that in Argento's canon of him starting to, because throughout his first three Giallo films, he really experimented with what he could get away with in the genre, and this could be the point where he started to go, let's take this, and his future film Tenebrae, which is I believe it's a final film or a final supplementary in the series, really goes for the telepathy sort of plot lines. So yeah, this is definitely the start of him going, let's play with something a bit weirder.
They also had bits just about psychology, you know, when they were like, he's clearly a schizophrenic. It's like, I don't know, just, it was interesting the way they explored. I think, what you're saying is, it felt like the psychology and supernatural almost like sort of in sort of murmuring in the background, you know, and there are tones there. I wonder how, just your thoughts maybe on how it like meshed with the plot, the whole, you know, that whole angle of things. I wrote some other examples, but well, the schizophrenia, you know, there was like the whole fact that she's a psychic at the start, and there was like the clairvoyant, and he even, that weird man even calls his daughter a witch, you know. I don't know if these are maybe.
No.
I'm trying to find a theme that's not there.
You're trying to make it coherent, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe, there's definitely a theme of that, but I think that's maybe just to bring to the sense of unease. I would say, in terms of psychology, the film deals a lot more with sort of the repression of tragedy and the lasting effect it can have. I mean, I think, are we at a point where we can go full spoilers on this? Cool. So
we're going full spoilers.
Yeah, sorry. So when it's revealed that Carlo's mother, who just gives one of the most insane performances I've ever seen throughout this film, but it's excellent, is the murderer. I was reading that is supposed to be that she was sent to a mental institute and refusing to go, so murders her husband, which then leads. Again, if you're looking at perhaps Argento's representation of Carlo's sexuality, the idea that he's a deeply disturbed individual who has this Norman Bates relationship with his mother, essentially turns out gay, it's maybe not the best representation. It's unfortunate seeding, but the film, it does throw in little elements of the supernatural, but I think that's more of a stylistic choice overall, to just add to the slightly perverse and uneasy nature of it.
I think it's like in horror and thriller films, even today, they use psychology and mental health and the supernatural to kind of make people scared, because we've seen it in films that have been made recently. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think we should stop using that sort of thing in like thrillers and horrors, make like people with like mental health problems, like making them seem like they're all but I think it's part of that genre. It's used to, I suppose, make it scary and
I think, I mean, even if you go back to the original Halloween, the whole idea of Michael Myers being the disturbed child, and in this, when it's sort of a schizophrenia, it's just meant to present the unpredictability, and it's a lazy trend that feels unpleasant upon modern rewatching.
I think it was also, for me, striking in contrast with, or in juxtaposition with, Blood and Black Lace and Your Vice. I won't say full title. But Blood and Black Lace, that was 2 weeks ago, so memory's already getting hazy on that. But I just remember in it being quite strong in Your Vice that psychology felt at the core of that film. You talked a lot about Freud and how, you know, just to keep you up to date, but it was basically kind of, we just talked about it a bit, but kind of exploring you know, maybe how, you know, development can lead to, like, you know, manifest in adulthood with these like weird sexual kinks and other sort of weird desires and that kind of thing. So it felt like there's a kind of theme with psychology and that kind of thing in Giallo, and it just felt like an interesting, because it was almost like, I guess what I was trying to get at is it blends psychology with supernatural a little bit, I thought, with the kind of, you know, parapsychology and telepathy and that kind of thing. But
I would say the film has less of a psychological
that's fair.
The trend than Your Vice, which is just a fever pot of sort of horrible mentalities all clashing with each other. But I can see what you're doing with that, sort of suggesting the parapsychology thing. In my mind, though, the psychic at the beginning maybe it's meant to be that the killer is a certain aura or something they pick up upon, and it's sort of going, again, you can tell when someone has unpleasant thoughts, or perhaps calling, recognizing the violence within them, but I think it's more down to, at least in my reading of it, it's more down to a stylistic sort of choice to just throw the viewer off, bring an element of sort of unpredictability, where you're going, I don't know what's going to come next, and if you presented something like that early on, it might take us by surprise.
Con una mente perversa. I suoi pensieri sono pensieri di morte. Via! Tu.
Your thoughts on the deaths.
Oh, God. It's so
Do you want to leave this one?
gruesome.
Do you have a favourite?
They
or
do
a
make
grisliest?
They do really make me cringe a lot of
Yeah,
deaths in these
especially the
films.
you
When-
really have a thing about teeth as
Yeah,
well.
I do
So that one
really.
didn't go down well.
Although that one, I do love the wee robot puppet thing at the
Yeah,
beginning of that
Yeah,
film.
that was weird as
What the hell was
well.
that?
So random.
Yeah, no, that scene is incredibly uncomfortable. There's actually a really interesting point about that, where Argento and the co-writer Bernardo Zapponi, I believe it is, who wrote with Fellini and did his adaptation of Casanova, they based all of the deaths around real world fears people had, or sort of incidental things that could happen, and that's
Yeah.
why they're so uncomfortable. But in the original script Argento was working on, he wanted this film to just be sort of death, just
Oh, really?
make it completely over the top, but Zapponi just went, no, have less, make them uncomfortable based on real world fears, and people remember them. And
Yeah.
I think
It's a good call.
I think they're very effective.
Mm.
They are all so unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the one at the end, it's
Yeah.
like sort of comical at
Yeah.
first, the way it happens, but then actually as he's being dragged along the road, I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
that's so sore, that'd be
Yeah.
so painful.
And
the
the necklace one is
Yeah.
it's a fact.
it
Oh,
does
yeah.
feel like a thing where people do have a fear about getting caught in an elevator
Yeah.
as well, or getting caught on a truck, maybe a garbage truck. And
Like,
getting
I guess if you look
nasty burn.
if you look both of them, it's just the everyday sort of real world
Yeah, it's a
things
good point,
used
yeah.
in a malicious context.
Yeah.
I mean, as we said earlier, the bath one, that's the one that
Yeah,
got
that
me
one,
because it's
that
so
one I found
prolonged and it's
Mm.
so unpleasant, but it's just such a simple thing of hot water. That's it. It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. I think it definitely gives Deep Red a kind of very interesting identity where perhaps, as we said, the attitudes within it and some of the discussions they have are dated, but the film isn't, I would say in its presentation, it isn't outright nasty, unlike Giallo being quite a cheap sort of disposable genre, for lack of a better word. Some of the films did just go, let's follow the Bava routine, let's just make this violent, make this uncomfortable, and sort of has a disturbing sort of nihilistic presence, but I wouldn't say you got that within it. It was trying to tell a coherent story, trying to sort of engross you into the world, and then those moments come, and they're very, very disturbing because of it, yeah.
Favorite death.
I wouldn't say it's my favourite, but the one that stuck with me is the teeth being smashed
He
against
really
the mantelpiece.
swallows that mantelpiece.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's the way he like gets like a few knocks and he's like, oh, he's had the worst of it.
Yeah.
And he like falls onto the other one.
Falls into the table.
Yeah. So unfortunate.
How do they do that? How would they?
How would they capture it?
Yeah.
So-
Killer practical effect. Would it be practical?
Practical effects,
wouldn't it?
yeah. Do you mean how they actually filmed it, or in like how would they make it look?
Yeah, how do they make
real?
it look real?
I'm going to assume it's not a real table, so they probably have something foam cropped.
That made me feel bad.
But it's even the fact in that one where they do I think this film looks amazing.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't think we've actually touched upon
Yeah.
yet, but it's shot by Alberto Tizzano, who did cinematography for Blood and Black Lace. So he has a
you can
good
see the similar
but
look.
even things like the sort of auditorium that the psychic convention is in, it's this beautifully centered shot with just a red backdrop. That looks great, but then in that murder scene where it does the close up of the knife being raised up and then brought down, it's so effective. I think the visual storytelling here is really impressive, and you can tell Argento and Tizzano both have a love for the genre and the stories they tell. So
I think that there was very little screen time of it, but the scene with the child, young Carlo, and the mother at Christmas was, I think because it was so well shot, it really sticks in your head. Like it was very like white and crisp, and like it was the blood was in such visual contrast with it that it really felt quite. There's something quite, I don't know, really stayed with me, that image.
Yeah, it's really nicely shot, and that wide angle shot as the father walks towards Carlo and Carlo's mother comes into view from the left. It's really effective, and sort of you know what's going to happen, and it just plays out. But also the fact the film has shown you that scene about 4 or 5 times previously with the kids' drawing of it throughout. I think, it's the dread you get knowing what's going to happen.
And last week you asked me how does it rank.
Where's this land in your rankings?
I think it's been my favourite so far. Actually.
Is it your favourite?
That's fine, yeah. Let's see how it goes. But I think it was probably like the best made of the 3. I think Your Vice was a mess. A wonderful, beautiful mess. But a mess. And I think I like Blood and Black Lace, but it felt more like it was like experimenting and exploring. This feels like it understands what it's doing a bit more. It feels a little more like confident maybe in its, I don't know. It feels like it worked. There were bits that I felt didn't quite stay with me, whereas there's a lot of scenes in this one that I felt had, and the music as well, and like you're saying, the cinematography is really striking.
Yeah, it's feels, I could agree with that, it feels a lot more confident in terms of storytelling. Perhaps that's bringing on Saponi that sort of held back the interesting ideas I'm sure Argento would have had. I mean, it was never going to reach Your Vice levels of what the hell is happening.
You really missed the treat last week.
I feel like I need to watch it.
How did it for you? How did it compare to Blood and Black Lace?
So I think I said to you before that I actually preferred Blood and Black Lace, but the more we've spoken about it, I actually think this film has given me more to think about. And like you said, a lot of the scenes have actually stuck with me a lot more than Blood and Black Lace. When I think back to Blood and Black Lace now, I remember the bell scene.
Oh yeah.
But
that.
there are like sort of snippets of it, but this, I think it really like has visually stuck with me a lot more. And some of the themes that are explored in it are quite interesting.
I could see that definitely. I think Blood and Black Lace is such an important one because it really defines the look of Giallo, and it sort of goes for that kind of sleazy sort of bright lit. But in this, it just feels more like an actual film. As you said, you remember snippets. I feel Blood and Black Lace is a film you can watch, tune out, come back, and then you get that exposition dump at the end. So you didn't have to pay attention. This one has a lot going on, a lot of different moving parts.
A lot of cool motifs and that kind of thing with the drawing and the music. Exactly. Do you think how would this be considered in the broader, in terms of quality?
This is definitely, I would say, for most Giallo fans, this would be in their top 5, I think. This is the one that I think if people were trying to get someone into Giallo, they probably go, oh, deep red, that's or Suspiria, but then there's so much contention from some pretentious corners about Suspiria not being a Giallo film.
Interesting.
That I think this is the one that you kind of go, it's got a storyline you can follow. I mean, it gets a little convoluted, but it finds its way.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Solange, what have we done to Solange next week? We'll be talking about Here, 8 p.m. All the reviews are on our website. You can watch Don't Touch a Duckling, that's our supplementary one. And yeah, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Alright.